Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Future of Development Finance. I'm Raj Kumar, President, Editor-in-Chief of Devex. Delighted to be back with all of you again, joining us from around the world to talk about what we think is one of the most important issues as we come out of the pandemic, and that is how do you connect the money to the sustainable development goals and the climate goals that are so important in the world today. I'm really happy to be joined by Lori Kerr, who is the new CEO of FinDev Canada. Lori, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
And Lori, when you're new to the role, you just came in, and a lot of people were talking about the fact that you have come to this role from a climate background. You were at the World Bank, you were at the Inter-American Development Bank, and it's sort of a signal when a new CEO is appointed at a major DFI. Why do you think someone with a climate background ended up in this CEO role at FinDev Canada? What does it say about sort of the intentions of FinDev Canada going forward?
Great. Thanks so much, Raj. Again, it's really a pleasure to be here. I've long admired Devex, and I'm just thrilled to be part of the Future of Development Finance Summit. Yeah, just in terms of my background, I think it might say a lot, bringing someone with a strong climate background into FinDev Canada, but I have to say that since the outset, when FinDev Canada was established in 2018, climate action was actually one of the three impact goals that the institution put forth for itself, in addition with developing markets, as well as gender investing. So climate has always been center to the impact priorities of FinDev Canada, and I'm just thrilled to join the organization and ramp up and amp up our ambition around climate, which we can talk about in a little bit in terms of what our ambitions are.
Yeah, let's stay on that because obviously a lot of the low and middle income countries that you focus on are not the major contributors to greenhouse gases, but climate is has a huge impact on the people of those countries. So what are you doing? Where do you see kind of the role of development finance and in the climate agenda?
Sure, absolutely. So, we all know that development finance institutions have played a long role in supporting investment in climate. We're an integral part of that conversation as we kind of go into COP. DFIs have been an important part of the conversation. In the years before this COP, in the weeks in the run up to the COP, and post Glasgow, we're always going to continue to be a strong voice. Post Glasgow, maybe to get to your question, what are we doing? And maybe I'd answer that question sort of on two dimensions. What are we doing individually, and what are we doing collectively? Individually, DFIs, we have long supported private investment in emerging markets, and some for many decades. If we take a look at CDC, one of our great partners, probably the oldest development finance institution around. And we take a look at FinDev Canada, which is, we're the newest kid on the block. And we take all of the other development finance institutions around the globe. It's really quite a robust community. And like I said, we've all been supporting private investment in developing countries and increasingly over time supporting climate mitigation and to a lesser extent, adaptation and resiliency. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But one aspect that we all share is the intent to direct even more resources towards climate action. Individually, you'll probably see that most DFIs, if not all, have put forth targets committing to allocate a larger part of their business volumes to Paris-aligned climate finance, ranging around 30-35%. Individually, you're seeing, among other types of commitments, net zero commitments,
Mhm.
intentionality around mobilizing private capital, supporting clients with technical assistance, for example, to accelerate green growth, access to renewable energy, adaptation and resiliency, nature, biodiversity, and so forth. If you'd like, I can share a little bit about where FinDev Canada is on our own actions to combat climate.
Well, I just want to ask one quick question as a follow-up to what you were just saying. So, there's sort of two sides to the ledger as I see it. There's projects that are directly aligned to climate action, that's their goal. And then there's others where maybe you want to make sure you're not doing some harm as you're investing in a private initiative or infrastructure. How are you planning? I know you're very new in the role, but how are you planning to lead FinDev Canada in this direction? Will you be rejecting deals if you think they're bad for the climate, in addition to finding those 35% that are really directly, supportive of the climate agenda?
Sure, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, one of the key impact goals of FinDev Canada is around climate action, and one of the goals that we're putting forth as we come into COP, as we release our new climate change strategy. Currently, we're about 30% climate finance, and we're going to amp up that ambition to 35% climate finance by 2025. So we're certainly looking to increase our ambition around that agenda. We're also looking to we've built a net negative greenhouse gas portfolio already, given our investment strategy around low carbon investments, low emitting, no fossil fuel investments, as well as some forestry investments that we've made. So we've already built a net greenhouse gas emission negative portfolio, and going forward, we're committing to having continue investments aligned with the Paris Agreement. So what we do as a matter of practice is, like our peer DFIs, we include environmental, social, and governance analysis as part of our due diligence, process. So as we have been and as we will going forward, we will definitely take a look at all of the ESG, all of the climate-related impacts of individual investments, as well as at the portfolio level, to ensure that we're making good on our commitments around climate. So again, I think it's a continuation of the strategy that FinDev Canada had put in place at the beginning, but we're definitely looking to follow that same trajectory with increased ambition over time.
And maybe you can give us a sense of the kinds of projects you're looking to fund, because obviously in a lot of low and middle income countries, it's infrastructure that is the big area of need and where DFIs are playing a really big role. How are you connecting the climate work with this need for infrastructure in the countries you serve?
Sure, absolutely. So it's interesting because if we look at a couple of the regions that FinDev Canada focuses on, so we prioritize investments in Latin America and the Caribbean and Sub-Saharan Africa. And if we take a look at just South America and Africa, these subregions, these continents, they've only contributed 3% each to global CO2 emissions, yet they are disproportionately impacted by climate change. So we certainly feel that we need to support these countries in increasing their climate ambition as well. Maybe to be a little bit more specific around sustainable infrastructure. We all know how important sustainable infrastructure is for social progress, for economic growth, for climate action. We also know that there are a billion people still without access to electricity, 2.2 billion people without access to water, 4 billion people without access to sanitation service, and I could go on with the data points. But there's huge opportunity around infrastructure. Infrastructure connects people to jobs, it connects people to services, connects people to market, and it connects people to each other. So without a robust backbone of infrastructure and infrastructure services, we're really sort of leaving countries behind in their development aspirations. So that's certainly one area that FinDev Canada is looking to support more in around that sustainable infrastructure agenda.
You talked a little bit, Lori, about your pillars, and one of them is gender investing. How are you connecting, if at all, the focus on gender with the focus on climate? Do these things exist in different domains, or are you kind of looking at them as self-reinforcing? How does it work for you at FinDev Canada?
Yeah, a really great question. So, if we think about climate change and we think about gender inequality and women's economic empowerment, these two issues are really, the two of the most critical issues that are facing the global economy and developing markets in particular. So we don't view it as it's a climate change approach or a gender approach. We really fuse that together, and it's a kind of an all of the above approach that we look at. And so, what does this mean in practice? So FinDev Canada is, we pride ourselves on being a gender lens investor. And what that means is that we bring a gender lens to everything we do. And I said, we're looking to really weave that more deeply in with the climate change agenda. So our climate change strategy that we've put forth has three different pillars to it. One is around the gender climate nexus and supporting gender projects that have a climate angle, and certainly bringing gender to climate investments. The second one is around enabling adaptation and resilience, and the third one is around driving net zero. So we're certainly bringing gender as a cornerstone of our approach going forward.
Now, we've only a moment left here, but I'm just curious, you're new in this role, but you're not new to the world of DFIs. Where do you think DFIs briefly fit into this broader agenda? As you say, COP is coming up. What is the call to action, if any, that you have for the broader community of DFIs?
Yeah, so I think DFIs and our multilateral partners as well, DFIs writ large, climate change is a collective problem and it requires a collective solution. And I've been really inspired with some of the collaboration platforms that I've seen around the DFI universe, where DFIs are not just acting individually, but we're acting collectively. And I think that a collective problem like climate change requires collective solutions. And so what I'm really looking forward to is maximizing the work that we do together with our peer DFIs. The solution is greater than any one of us individually can tackle. We bring individual expertise and financing and investment to the table, but we can really achieve more by acting together. So I guess the call to action, which is not a new call because we're actually living it on a day-to-day basis, is for the DFI community to really band together and do more on the financing and investment side, but also on the thought leadership side, on the case study side, on bringing the reality of the markets to the investment community.
Yeah, DFIs have a really key role to play. It's why it's a big theme at our conference here. Thank you for being a part of it, Lori Kerr, and thank you to FinDev Canada for working with us this year. Everyone's gonna. I know you're new in the role, but everyone's watching to see what happens at FinDev Canada under your leadership. Thanks for spending some time with us today, Lori.
Thank you so much, Raj. Pleasure to be here.